I always thought family meant unconditional support no matter what. That belief shattered the day my parents kicked me out, blaming me for my sister's pregnancy. I still remember standing outside our home with one suitcase, stunned and heartbroken. Over the past year, I built a new life from nothing. Then yesterday, I received a text from my parents wanting to reconcile. The question is, after everything they put me through, do I even want them back in my life? Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from. Hit subscribe if you've ever had to choose between your dignity and family. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. My name is Sophia, and I grew up in Pine Grove, Colorado, a town so small that everybody knew everybody's business. My parents, Richard and Martha Williams, were pillars of the community. Dad served as an elder at First Community Church, while Mum led the women's ministry group. In Pine Grove, the Williams family name carried weight and expectations. From an early age, I understood that my family valued tradition, respectability, and appearances. Our home ran like clockwork, with family devotions each morning, mandatory church attendance twice on Sundays, and carefully monitored friendships. My parents believed in raising children the right way, which meant strict discipline, limited pop culture exposure, and constant reminders about representing the family name. My sister Allison was born when I was 2 years old, and she seemed to naturally fit the mold our parents created. She was studious, obedient, and rarely questioned authority. While I loved my sister deeply, I couldn't help noticing how much easier life seemed for her. When Allison brought home perfect report cards, our parents beamed with pride. When she volunteered for church nursery duty or helped Mum prepare meals for sick congregation members, they praised her servant's heart. I, on the other hand, was different from the start. I asked questions during family devotions that made my father sigh. I befriended the kids at school that my mother referred to as lacking proper guidance at home. I wasn't rebellious exactly, but I had an independent streak that my parents viewed with suspicion. Sunday dinners became a stage for displaying our family dynamics. Mum would spend hours preparing pot roast mashed potatoes and her famous apple pie. We'd sit around the dining room table, cloth napkins in our laps, as Dad asked about our week. "Allison, tell us about your science project," Dad would say, cutting into his roast beef. Allison would launch into a detailed explanation of her work, which typically involved something safe and parent-approved, like plant growth or water purification. Mum and Dad would nod appreciatively, asking follow-up questions that allowed Allison to showcase her knowledge and diligence. When my turn came, the atmosphere subtly shifted. "And what about you, Sophia? Anything interesting happened this week?" If I mentioned a controversial book I was reading or a discussion from social studies class that challenged traditional viewpoints, the temperature in the room would drop 10 degrees. Dad would clear his throat, Mum would suddenly become very interested in rearranging the food on her plate, and Allison would shoot me warning glances. Despite these tensions, we were still a family, and I loved them. I believed they loved me too, even if they didn't always understand me. That belief sustained me through high school and gave me courage when I decided to study psychology at Colorado State instead of education at the Christian college they preferred. College opened my eyes to different perspectives and gave me space to develop my own identity away from Pine Grove's watchful eyes. I explored new ideas, made diverse friends, and discovered my passion for counseling troubled youth. When I called home, I learned to filter my experiences, sharing only what wouldn't worry or disappoint my parents. After graduation, the 2008 recession hit, and the job market for new psychology graduates dried up. With student loans coming due and limited prospects, I reluctantly moved back to Pine Grove. My parents welcomed me home with a mixture of happiness and "I told you so" regarding my career choice. Teaching would have given you job security. Dad reminded me over dinner my first night back. Schools always need teachers. "Richard," Mum cautioned gently, "Sophia is home now. Let's focus on that blessing." Living at home as an adult proved challenging. My parents expected me to follow the same rules as in high school, including curfews and approved outings. I pushed back as respectfully as I could, negotiating for the independence I'd grown accustomed to at college. After 3 months of searching, I found a position at the Pine Grove Youth Center as a counselor for at-risk teens. The pay was modest, but the work fulfilled me. Seeing the difference I could make in young lives confirmed I'd chosen the right path regardless of my parents' doubts. My dating life became another source of tension. When I briefly dated Miguel, a kind-hearted nurse at the local clinic, my parents made uncomfortable comments about cultural differences. When I later went out with Zach, a graphic artist with tattoos who'd grown up in Pine Grove but left for art school, Dad suggested I was lowering my standards. Their reaction to Taylor, a woman I met at a professional development conference and went hiking with several times, was complete silence and pretending the friendship didn't exist. Through all this, Alison remained my closest ally in the family, though even our relationship had complications. She'd attended the local community college and earned a business degree that pleased our parents. She worked at the bank, lived at home, taught Sunday school, and rarely rocked the boat. Sometimes I sensed she envied my independence, but she never said so directly. "I wish I could stand up to them like you do," she whispered one night after a particularly tense dinner where Dad had lectured me about staying out past 11 on a weeknight. "But I'm not brave like you." "It's not about bravery," I told her. "It's about being true to yourself." Little did I know how those words would come back to haunt me, or how our family's emphasis on propriety and reputation would soon tear us apart completely. The first signs that something was wrong with Alison appeared so gradually that I almost missed them. My sister had always been the picture of stability, but suddenly she was skipping meals claiming she wasn't hungry. She'd disappear for hours without explanation, which was completely out of character. When she was home, she seemed distracted, checking her phone constantly and smiling at texts. One Wednesday evening, I passed the bathroom and heard the unmistakable sound of someone getting sick. The door wasn't fully closed, so I peeked in to find Alison kneeling over the toilet. "Food poisoning," I asked, grabbing a washcloth and wetting it with cool water. Alison jumped, startled by my presence. "Just something I ate," she said too quickly, avoiding my eyes. I handed her the cloth. "You've been just eating something a lot lately. Is everything okay?" She wiped her mouth and stood up shakily. "I'm fine. Don't mention this to Mom and Dad, okay? They'll just worry." I agreed, but suspicion had taken root. Over the next week, I paid closer attention to my sister. She was definitely hiding something, and I was determined to find out what. My chance came one night when our parents went to an overnight church leadership retreat in Denver. Alison had been holed up in her room all evening, and I decided it was time for some sisterly bonding. I made hot chocolate-grabbed cookies and knocked on her door. "Not hungry," came her muffled reply. "It's not about food. I thought we could talk. Mom and Dad are gone, so no interruptions." After a long pause, she opened the door. Her eyes were red from crying, and my heart sank. Something was seriously wrong. We sat cross-legged on her bed like we used to as kids, mugs of cocoa between us. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. "You can tell me anything," I finally said. "You know that, right?" Alison stared into her mug. "You'll think I'm such a hypocrite." "Try me." She took a deep breath. "I've been seeing someone for almost 6 months now. This wasn't what I'd expected." "That's great. Who is he? Why keep it secret?" "His name is Jackson." She smiled despite herself. Jackson Miller. The name explained everything. The Millers were known in Pine Grove for their liberal views and occasional conflicts with the church. Jackson's father owned the town's only bar, and his mother taught literature at the high school, where she'd once suggested reading The Catcher in the Rye, causing a parent uproar. Our parents would definitely not approve. "We met at the bank," Alison continued. "He came in to discuss a small business loan. He's opening a coffee shop." Her voice softened. "He's nothing like what Mom and Dad would assume, Sophia. He's kind and hardworking and funny. So why not tell them you're 26, Alison? They can't forbid you from dating someone." She laughed bitterly. "You know exactly why. Remember Miguel? Remember how they treated him? And he was a nurse who went to church. Jackson doesn't attend church. His family runs a bar, and his tattoos would give Dad a heart attack." She had a point. Our parents' judgment could be harsh and unrelenting. "So what are you going to do? Keep sneaking around forever?" "Actually," she whispered, "we're talking about getting engaged, but I'm terrified of telling Mom and Dad." I reached out and squeezed her hand. "When you're ready, I'll be right there with you." Over the next few weeks, I became Alison's confidant, an occasional cover story. When she was with Jackson, she was having dinner with Sophia. I met Jackson several times and genuinely liked him. He adored my sister and treated her with respect. His coffee shop plans were well thought out, and his business loan had been approved. He'd even leased a space on Main Street. I couldn't understand why Alison felt the need to keep him secret other than our parents' likely disapproval. "Just introduce him to Mom and Dad," I urged one evening after covering for another of their dates. "Rip the Band-Aid off." "Soon," she promised. "We're working up to it." But as another month passed, Alison grew more withdrawn, not less. She lost weight, appeared constantly anxious, and called in sick to work several times, which was unheard of for my responsible sister. I began to wonder if there was more to the story than just dating someone our parents wouldn't approve of. My answer came at 2 a.m. on a rainy Tuesday. A soft knock pulled me from sleep, and I opened my door to find Alison in tears, shaking uncontrollably. "What happened?" I guided her to my bed, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "Did you and Jackson break up?" She shook her head, unable to speak through her sobs. I held her until the crying subsided enough for words to emerge. "I'm pregnant, Sophia." The words hung in the air between us. My mind raced with questions. How far along does Jackson know? What did she want to do? But looking at her tear-stained face, I knew those questions could wait. "I'm here," I said simply, holding her close. "Whatever you need, I am here." Eventually, details emerged through hiccuping sobs. She was about 8 weeks along. Yes, Jackson knew and was supportive. No, they hadn't planned this, but were committed to each other and the baby. "The timing is all wrong," she wept. "We wanted to be married first, have the coffee shop established. And Mum and Dad, they'll never forgive me." "Hey," I took her face in my hands. "This is the 21st century. Plenty of couples have babies before marriage. And Mom and Dad love you. They'll adjust." But even as I spoke, the reassurance's doubt crept in. Our parents placed enormous value on their reputation in the community. Their unmarried daughter's pregnancy would be scandalous in their social circle. Their disappointment would be crushing. "We need a plan," I said finally. "First, have you seen a doctor?" She nodded. "Last week. Everything looks normal." "Good. Next we need to tell Mom and Dad together. I'll be right beside you." Alison wiped her eyes. "Will you help me figure out what to say? I can barely think straight." We stayed up the rest of the night crafting an approach. We decided on Sunday after church, when our parents would be relaxed from worship, and before Sunday dinner when they'd be hungry and irritable. I would start the conversation, creating a supportive atmosphere before Alison shared her news. We'd emphasize Jackson's positive qualities, the committed relationship, and their plans for the future. It seemed like a solid strategy. We just needed to make it through the next few days until Sunday. But the best-laid plans often go awry, and ours fell apart Thursday afternoon when Mum decided to clean the upstairs bathroom. I was at work when my phone exploded with texts from Alison. "Rushu. Emergency. Mum found pregnancy test in bathroom trash. Come home now." I rushed home to find a nightmare scenario already unfolding. Mum had called Dad home from work early. Alison was sobbing at the dining room table. The pregnancy test lay in the centre like evidence at a trial. I walked into a silence so thick it felt suffocating. "Sophia." Dad acknowledged my arrival without taking his eyes off Alison. "Your sister has something to tell you." From the hardness in his voice, I knew our careful plan had disintegrated. All I could do now was damage control. The dining room had never felt smaller or more suffocating. Mum sat rigid in her chair, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Dad's face had taken on the stern expression he reserved for serious disciplinary moments. Alison looked absolutely broken, mascara streaking down her face, tissues shredded in her lap. "What's going on?" I asked, though I already knew. Dad gestured to the pregnancy test on the table. "Your mother found this while cleaning today. Alison has confirmed it's hers." I moved to sit beside my sister, taking her trembling hand in mine. "Alison, are you okay?" Before she could answer, Dad interrupted. "Okay, how could she possibly be okay? She's unmarried and pregnant." "Do you understand what this means for her, for this family?" "Richard," Mum said quietly, "let's try to stay calm." "Calm." His voice rose. "Our daughter has been living in sin behind our backs. Martha, the church board meeting is at our house next week. Pastor Williams's daughter is pregnant out of wedlock. How do you expect me to lead with moral authority now?" I felt a surge of anger. "Dad, this isn't about you or your position at church. This is about Alison and the baby." His glare shifted to me. "Don't start with your progressive nonsense, Sophia. This situation is serious." "I know it's serious," I said, struggling to keep my voice level. "That's why we need to focus on supporting Alison right now, not worrying about church gossip." Mum finally spoke directly to Alison. "Who is the father? Do we know him?" Alison raised her eyes, voice barely audible. "His name is Jackson Miller." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 more degrees. "Miller," Dad's face flushed dark red. "As in Tom Miller's son, the bar owner." Alison nodded miserably. "How long has this been going on?" Mum demanded. 6 months, Alison whispered. 6 months. Mum's composure cracked. "You've been sneaking around with that Miller boy for half a year. How could you be so deceitful?" I wasn't being deceitful, Alison protested weakly. I just knew you wouldn't approve. Of course we wouldn't approve. Dad slammed his hand on the table, making us all jump. The Millers stand against everything we believe in. That family has been a thorn in this community's side for years. Jackson isn't like that, I interjected. He's starting his own business, a coffee shop downtown. He's responsible and he cares about Alison. Dad's head snapped toward me. You knew about this. You knew she was seeing this boy. I hesitated just a moment too long. Sophia introduced us, Alison blurted out. My blood ran cold as 3 pairs of eyes turned to me. What? I gasped. She's the one who encouraged me to date him. Alison continued, words tumbling out faster. She said I needed to live a little, that I was too uptight. Alison? That's not true. I stared at my sister in disbelief. I never introduced you. You met at the bank, remember? You told me yourself. Mum's eyes narrowed. So you did know about this relationship. You've been helping her hide it. I only found out a few weeks ago. I defended myself. And yes, I supported her because Jackson is a good person regardless of his last name. Dad stood up, towering over the table. This is exactly the kind of influence I've always worried about, Sophia. Your disregard for tradition, for our family values, for basic morality has finally corrupted your sister. Corrupted her dad. She's 26 years old. She made her own choices. After you filled her head with your liberal college ideas, he shot back. Alison never gave us a moment's worry until you came back from university with your psychology degree and your new enlightened viewpoints. The accusation was so unfair, it left me speechless. Alison seized the opening. Sophia told me what happens in Pine Grove, stays in Pine Grove, that no one would find out if we were careful. She helped me sneak out to see Jackson. That's a complete lie. I turned to my sister. Alison, why are you saying these things? But I could see it in her eyes, the desperate self-preservation, the instinctive shifting of blame to save herself from our parents' disappointment. Alison had always been the good daughter, the perfect one. She couldn't bear to lose that status, even at my expense. Is this true, Sophia? Mum asked, her voice cold. Have you been encouraging your sister to lie to us? No, I found out about Jackson recently. Yes, I met him and thought he was good for Alison. I encouraged her to tell you both about him, but I never ever told her to sneak around or suggested she hide anything from you. Dad shook his head slowly. I always knew your influence would lead to something like this. Ever since you went away to that state school instead of Summit Christian College, you've been pulling away from the values we raised you with. This isn't about me, I protested. Alison is pregnant. She needs support, not blame. What she needs, Dad said firmly, is to understand the seriousness of her sin and make things right. She will marry this boy immediately before she begins to show. Richard? Mum looked shocked. We haven't even met him. We don't know if he's suitable. He's a Miller Martha. Of course he's not suitable, but he's responsible for this situation, and he will take responsibility. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You can't force them to get married just because of a pregnancy. This isn't the 1950s. Dad turned on me, face contorted with anger. This is exactly the problem, Sophia. You think our traditional values are outdated, something to mock. But those values protect people, protect families. Look what's happened because Alison strayed from them. Dead people make mistakes. Unexpected pregnancies happen. The world doesn't end. In this family, he said icily, we live by God's standards, not the world's. And what about forgiveness, understanding, compassion? Aren't those God's standards too? The argument escalated, voices rising, old grievances surfacing. Mum brought up the time I'd come home from college with blue hair. Dad mentioned my inappropriate friendship with Taylor. Every instance of my independence was reframed as rebellion, as proof that I was a corrupting influence. Through it all, Alison sat silently, occasionally nodding when our parents directed blame my way. I kept expecting her to speak up to tell the truth, but she remained mute, thrown me to the wolves to save herself. Finally, Dad delivered his ultimatum. Sophia, if you can't admit the role you played in this situation, if you can't commit to supporting our family values moving forward, then perhaps this household isn't the right place for you anymore. I stared at him, not comprehending at first. What are you saying? I'm saying you need to apologize for your part in this, commit to change your attitude or find somewhere else to live. The room spun around me. You're kicking me out because Alison got pregnant. I'm asking you to respect the values of this household or leave, he corrected, as if the distinction mattered. I looked at Mum, hoping for intervention, but she stared at her hands. I turned to Alison, silently pleading for her to tell the truth, but she avoided my gaze. In that moment, I saw my family clearly for the first time. Their love was conditional, their support limited to those who followed their rules without question. The realization broke something inside me. I won't apologize for something I didn't do, I said quietly, and I won't stay where I'm not trusted or valued. Dad nodded as if he'd expected this answer. Then you have 30 minutes to pack your essentials. You can arrange to collect the rest of your things later this week when we're not home. Just like that, I was homeless. The next 30 minutes passed in a surreal blur. I moved mechanically through my childhood bedroom, grabbing clothes, toiletries, important documents. What do you pack when your entire life has just imploded? I took my laptop, phone charger, a photo album. Everything else seemed irrelevant. Mum appeared in the doorway as I zipped my suitcase. "Sophia," she began, voice uncertain. I cut her off. "Don't. You sat there and let this happen. You didn't defend me once. Your father is very upset. He needs time to calm down. And what about me, Mum? What about what I need?" She wrung her hands. "If you would just apologize, even if you don't mean it." The suggestion wounded me more than Dad's anger. Lie to keep the peace. Is that the example you want to set? No wonder Alison lied about Jackson. Mum flinched. "Where will you go?" "I don't know. Does it matter to you?" "Of course it matters. You're my daughter." "Am I? Because right now it feels like Alison is your only child." I shouldered my backpack. "I need to finish packing." She left without another word. On my way out, I paused at Alison's closed door. Part of me wanted to confront her demand and explanation for her betrayal. Another part recognized the futility. She'd made her choice. I knocked softly. "I'm leaving, Alison." No response. "I hope you and Jackson will be happy. I hope the baby is healthy. But what you did today, I don't know if I can forgive that." Silence. I waited another moment, then continued down the stairs, where Dad stood by the front door, arms crossed. "I've called Pastor Mike," he informed me. "He's agreed to counsel you when you're ready to address your destructive behaviors." "Goodbye, Dad," I said, walking past him into the warm summer evening. I loaded my belongings into my car, a used Honda I'd purchased with my counseling salary. As I started the engine, the magnitude of what had just happened crashed over me. My family had thrown me away. I had nowhere to go, limited savings, and a job that barely covered expenses when I'd been living rent-free at home. Tears blurred my vision as I pulled away from the only home I'd ever known. I drove aimlessly for nearly an hour, trying to formulate a plan through my shock. Finally, I pulled into the parking lot of a diner and called Dana, a colleague from the youth centre. "Sophia," she answered, concerned by the lateness of the call. "Is everything okay?" "Not really." My voice broke. "I need somewhere to stay tonight. My parents just kicked me out." "What? Come over right now. I've got a spare room." Dana's apartment became my temporary refuge. She listened without judgment as I poured out the whole story, then helped me make lists of what I needed to do, find affordable housing, adjust my budget, figure out which possessions to retrieve from my parents' home. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time ever. I spent the day apartment hunting quickly, discovering that Pine Grove's rental market was both limited and expensive. By evening, I'd secured a tiny studio apartment across town, but the rent would consume over half my monthly income, and I needed first and last month's deposit immediately. Dana insisted I stay with her until I got on my feet. "The couch is yours as long as you need it," she assured me. For 2 weeks, I slept on Dana's sofa working extra shifts at the youth centre and a weekend job she helped me get at a local coffee shop. The irony of working at a coffee shop while Alison's boyfriend prepared to open one wasn't lost on me. When Dad emailed a terse message saying I could collect my remaining belongings on a Tuesday afternoon, Dana took the day off to help. We arrived to find boxes stacked in the garage already packed and labelled. My entire childhood and young adult life neatly contained and relegated to the same space as gardening tools and Christmas decorations. I couldn't decide if the efficiency was a kindness or a final rejection. Either way, I was grateful to avoid entering the house or seeing my family. The first night in my new apartment was one of the loneliest of my life. The space was small but felt cavernous in its emptiness. I had a futon from a thrift store kitchenware Dana had helped me collect and my boxes from home. No decorations, no comforts, just the bare essentials. I sat on the floor surrounded by unpacked boxes and finally allowed myself to break down completely. The sobs tore through me with physical pain, grief and anger intermingling until I couldn't distinguish between them. I cried for the family I'd lost, for the sister who betrayed me, for the unfairness of being punished for something I hadn't done. When the tears finally subsided, I felt hollow, but somehow clearer. This was my reality now. I could either collapse under it or figure out how to rebuild. The next weeks were a grinding exercise in adjustment. I worked constantly, took the bus to save gas money, ate ramen noodles more often than I care to remember. I counted every penny and still barely made ends meet. But gradually, impossibly, I began to adapt. The youth centre director noticed my extra effort and increased my hours. A local therapist offered reduced rate sessions after hearing my story through professional circles. Small kindnesses appeared when I needed them most, a co-worker bringing extra leftovers, Dana showing up with a houseplant to make the place feel more alive. A client's parent gifting me a gently used coffee table they were replacing. I learned that while blood family had rejected me, I wasn't without support. People I'd considered mere acquaintances stepped up with genuine concern. My circle was smaller, but somehow stronger. Through a counsellor friend, I found a therapist I could afford, Dr. Larson. Our first session, I spent the entire hour recounting what had happened, still in disbelief. "What strikes me," she said when I finished, "is how quickly your family's support vanished when you didn't comply with their expectations." "They've always been strict," I defended automatically, then caught myself. But this was different. They chose to believe Allison's lies without question. "Because her story confirmed their existing concerns about you," Dr. Larson suggested. "It's called confirmation bias." "So what do I do now? How do I just not have a family anymore?" Her answer stayed with me. "You build a chosen family, and you recognize that their rejection says more about their limitations than your worth." Over the following months, I did exactly that. I deepened friendships with colleagues who'd shown support. I reconnected with Madeline, a childhood friend who'd moved back to Pine Grove after college. I joined a book club and a hiking group, gradually creating connections that nourished rather than drained me. Meanwhile, news trickled in about my biological family. Jackson's coffee shop opened to local acclaim. Allison continued working at the bank until her pregnancy became obvious. They married in a small ceremony at a different church, not our parents'. I wasn't invited. The irony wasn't lost on me, that while my life outwardly appeared to have fallen apart, I was internally growing stronger. Working with troubled teens gave me perspective. Many of my clients had experienced far worse family trauma than mine. Their resilience inspired me to develop my own. When Thanksgiving approached, the first major holiday since the fallout, Madeline insisted I join her family's celebration. "Nobody should be alone on Thanksgiving," she declared. "Besides, my mom always asks about you." The contrast between Madeline's family dinner and my memories of William's family holidays was striking. The Taylor house was noisy and formal, with people talking over each other, sharing inside jokes, occasionally bickering, but quickly reconciling. No one maintained perfect appearances or worried about what the neighbours might think. After dinner, Madeline's mother hugged me tightly. "You always have a place at our table, honey. Family isn't just blood." I cried in my car afterward, not from sadness, but from the revelation that family could look different than what I'd been raised to believe, and might actually be healthier for it. Christmas brought similar generosity, with invitations from several friends. I accepted Dana's offer and spent Christmas Eve at her parents' home, where they insisted on giving me gifts, despite having just met me. Christmas Day, I volunteered at a community dinner, finding unexpected joy in creating holiday spirit for others, when my own traditions had vanished. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned Allison had given birth to a baby girl in January. They named her Rose. I sent a card and small gift but received no acknowledgement. The silence hurt, but I was becoming accustomed to this new normal, this life without my birth family at its centre. By spring, almost a year after being kicked out, I'd received a promotion at the youth centre to senior counsellor. The raise allowed me to move to a slightly larger apartment and occasionally splurge on small comforts. I'd developed new routines, new traditions, new connections. The pain hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed into something manageable, a dull ache rather than a sharp stab. I was surviving. Sometimes in quiet moments of honesty with myself, I admitted I might even be thriving in ways that wouldn't have been possible under my parents' restrictive influence. The irony wasn't lost on me in trying to punish me. They had inadvertently set me free. I was arranging books on my new bookshelf when my phone chimed with a text message. I expected it to be Madeline confirming our hiking plans for the weekend. Instead, I froze when I saw the name on the screen, Mum. "Sophia, I hope you're well. Your father and I would like to meet with you if you're willing. There are things we need to discuss. Please let me know." I sat down hard on my sofa phone, clutched in suddenly trembling hands. After nearly a year of silence, this brief message sent my emotions into chaos. Anger, hope, anxiety, and vindication all battled for dominance. I reread the message several times, analyzing every word. No explicit apology, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing, just a request to meet and discuss things. The vagueness was typical of my mother, who avoided direct confrontation whenever possible. What could they possibly want? Why now, after all this time? Had something happened? Was someone ill? I set the phone down without responding and tried to resume unpacking, but concentration proved impossible. After 15 minutes of accomplishing nothing, I grabbed my keys and headed to the small park near my apartment. Walking always helped me think. The spring afternoon was perfect, flowers blooming and children playing on the swings. I found an empty bench and sat watching a toddler chase bubbles while her mother laughed nearby. The scene made me think of baby Rose, my niece I'd never met. As if summoned by my thoughts, a second text arrived, this one from a number I didn't recognize. Sophia, it's Allison. I know you probably hate me, and I don't blame you, but I need to tell you I'm sorry. I told Mum and Dad the truth about everything. Please talk to me. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. Allison had confessed. After all this time, the revelation should have brought satisfaction, but instead I felt a complex swirl of emotions. Relief that the truth was finally acknowledged, fury that it had taken so long, bitterness over the wasted year. I saved the number but didn't respond to either message immediately. This situation required careful thought, not reactive emotion. That evening, I called Dr. Larson for an emergency phone session. My family has reached out, I explained. Both my mum and my sister. They want to meet. How do you feel about that? She asked. Confused, angry, curious, scared, I admitted. Part of me wants to ignore them completely. Another part wants answers. Those are all valid reactions, she assured me. What would meeting with them accomplish for you, and what boundaries would you need to make it a healthy interaction? We spent the next 30 minutes discussing possibilities and potential approaches. By the end, I felt clearer about my options. Remember, Dr. Larson said before we ended the call, you're in control here. You decide if, when, and how any reconnection happens, and you can change your mind at any point. Armed with this perspective, I texted Allison first. I need to understand exactly what happened. What did you tell them? Her response came quickly. Everything. That I lied about you introducing us. That you actually encouraged me to be honest with them. That I blamed you because I was scared. I told them how wrong I was and how terrible I've felt every day since. I considered this, then asked, why now it's been almost a year? The reply took longer this time. I couldn't live with myself anymore. Watching you build a new life while knowing I destroyed your relationship with Mom and Dad, it's been eating me alive. Rose deserves to know her aunt, and I miss my sister. I put the phone down and cried the first tears I'd shed over my family in months. They weren't entirely sad tears, though there was certainly pain there. They were also tears of validation, of relief that the truth had finally emerged. After consulting with friends and giving myself another day to process, I agreed to meet my parents at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. I deliberately chose one several doors down from Jackson's new place, a small act of defiance. The days leading up to the meeting were tense. I rehearsed what I might say, anticipating their explanations and preparing responses. I selected my outfit carefully, wanting to project confidence and stability. I even had Madeline drop me off so I wouldn't have the option to flee if emotions overwhelmed me. I arrived 15 minutes early to select a table with good sightlines and easy access to the exit. Ordered a latte and forced myself to sip it slowly despite my churning stomach. And then right on time they walked in. My first thought was how much older they looked. Dad's hair had more grey and Mom's face showed new lines of stress. They scanned the shop anxiously until Mum spotted me and nudged Dad. Their nervousness was oddly comforting, a reminder that this meeting mattered to them too. They approached tentatively, as if expecting me to disappear. Mum spoke first. Sophia, thank you for meeting us. Her voice quavered slightly. Dad nodded stiffly. You look well. I am well, I confirmed, gesturing to the chairs across from me. Please sit down. They ordered drinks and we engaged in awkward small talk about the weather until the barista delivered their coffees. Then silence descended heavy with unspoken words. Allison told us everything, Mum finally said, eyes fixed on her cup, about how she lied, about what really happened. Dad cleared his throat. We owe you an apology, Sophia. We jumped to conclusions without giving you a fair chance to defend yourself. The words should have felt vindicating, but they seemed inadequate against the magnitude of what had happened. "You didn't just jump to conclusions," I said quietly. "You threw me out of my home. You chose to believe the worst about me without question. You cut me out of your lives completely." "We were wrong." Dad admitted the words, clearly difficult for him. "I was wrong. I let my disappointment in Allison and my concerns about your independence cloud my judgment." "Concerns about my independence," I repeated. "You mean my failure to conform exactly to your expectations?" He flinched but nodded. "I've had to do a lot of soul-searching this past year. Pastor Mike has been helping us understand where we went wrong as parents." "We miss you," Mum added, tears forming. "The house feels empty without you. Family gatherings aren't the same." I took a deep breath. "I appreciate your apology, but I need you both to understand something. This wasn't a minor misunderstanding. You conditional love. I believed family meant supporting each other no matter what, but you showed me that in our family, love and acceptance had to be earned by following your rules." "That's not true," Mum protested. "We've always loved you. In your way, perhaps, but not unconditionally, not when it really counted." Dad looked genuinely pained. "We want to make things right, Sophia. We want you back in the family." The phrase struck me as odd. "Back in the family? I never left the family, Dad. You pushed me out." "You know what I mean," he said, flustered. "We want to rebuild our relationship." I considered them both carefully. "I'm not the same person I was a year ago. The Sophia you knew, the one who desperately sought your approval, who filtered herself to keep the peace, who accepted your judgment as the final word, she doesn't exist anymore." "We don't expect you to be unchanged," Mum said. "We just want a chance to know who you are now." I nodded slowly. "I might be open to that, but we would need to establish new boundaries, different expectations. This can't be about returning to the way things were because that relationship wasn't healthy." They exchanged glances, clearly not having anticipated this response. I think they'd expected either complete rejection or grateful reconciliation. My measured conditional acceptance caught them off guard. "What sort of boundaries?" Dad asked cautiously. "For starters, respect for my independence and my choices, even when they differ from yours. Acknowledgement that my worth isn't tied to my compliance with your values. And time, Dad. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight." The conversation continued for nearly 2 hours. We discussed potential steps forward, small ways to begin reconnecting. They told me about Allison Jackson and baby Rose. I shared selective details about my promotion and new apartment. We avoided deeper topics by unspoken agreement, saving those for when our fragile new communication felt more stable. As we prepared to leave, Mum asked hesitantly, "Would you be willing to meet your niece? Allison would love to see you." I paused, the prospect both appealing and intimidating. "Tell Allison to contact me directly. We have our own relationship to rebuild." Dad nodded, respecting my boundary for perhaps the first time ever. "Thank you for hearing us out today. It means more than you know." We parted with awkward half hugs and promises to be in touch. I watched them walk away, feeling strangely light, as if a weight I'd grown accustomed to carrying had partially lifted. The next day, Allison called. Our conversation was tearful, honest, and cathartic. She explained her fear in those moments when our parents discovered her pregnancy, how she'd panicked, and said the first thing that might deflect their disappointment. "I never imagined they would actually kick you out," she sobbed. "And then when they did, I was too cowardly to tell the truth. Every day that passed made it harder to come clean." "What changed?" I asked. "Rose," she said simply. "When she was born, I looked at her and thought about what I would want for her if someone treated her the way I treated you. I knew I had to make it right, whatever the cost." We agreed to meet the following weekend. When I first held my niece, a tiny bundle with Allison's blue eyes and Jackson's dark hair, something shifted inside me. This innocent child knew nothing of our family's fractures. She represented possibility, continuation, perhaps even healing. Over the following months, reconciliation proceeded in careful steps. Sunday dinners resumed on a monthly basis, now held at various homes, including mine, with new rules about respect and communication. Dad made visible efforts to check his judgmental tendencies. Mum called regularly, just to chat. Allison and I rebuilt our sisterhood around a new, more honest foundation. The process wasn't smooth or linear. There were difficult conversations, occasional setbacks, moments when old patterns threatened to resurface. But the shared commitment to creating healthier relationships prevailed. Christmas that year looked nothing like the formal tradition-bound celebrations of my childhood. We gathered at my apartment because it was most centrally located. Jackson brought specialty coffees from his now thriving shop. Dad helped me set up a small artificial tree without commenting on its lack of religious ornaments. Mum cooed over Rose, who at 11 months was just beginning to toddle. We exchanged modest gifts and ate a potluck dinner on mismatched dishes. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension, subjects carefully avoided. But it was authentic in a way our previous family interactions had never been. We were seeing each other as real, flawed humans rather than idealized versions of family roles. As we cleared dishes afterward, Mum paused beside me at the sink. "I'm proud of you, Sophia, not just for forgiving us, but for the strong, independent woman you've become." The words so longed for throughout my childhood, yet never spoken, brought unexpected tears. "Thank you, Mom. That means a lot." "I just wish," she added softly, "that it hadn't taken losing you for us to recognize what we had." I squeezed her hand. "Some lessons come at a high price. The important thing is that we learned from them." Later, watching my family interact in my small living room, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The pain had been transformative, forcing me to discover strengths I hadn't known I possessed. The rejection had freed me to define myself on my own terms, not through the narrow lens of others' expectations. Most importantly, I'd learned that true family, whether biological or chosen, is built on acceptance of our authentic selves, not conditional approval of our compliance. Love that disappears in the face of disappointment or disagreement isn't really love at all, just comfortable familiarity. I know now that having people in my life who only value a version of me that meets their expectations isn't a gift, it's a burden. Real connection comes from being seen and accepted as you truly are, even in your messiest, most uncertain moments. Building a life on my own terms taught me self-reliance, but it also showed me the value of genuine interdependence. We all need support networks, people who lift us when we falter. The difference is choosing those connections based on mutual respect rather than obligation or fear. My parents and I continue to work on our relationship. Some days are easier than others. We may never fully align in our worldviews or values, but we're learning to appreciate the differences rather than trying to eliminate them. It's a work in progress, much like life itself. If you're facing family rejection or conditional love, please know your worth isn't determined by others' ability to see it. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is create distance from toxic relationships, even when they're with family. Build your chosen family from people who celebrate rather than merely tolerate you. Have you ever had to rebuild family relationships after a major falling out? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience and self-discovery. Like and share if you know someone who might need to hear that their value doesn't depend on family approval. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the family we create matters more than the family we're born into.